Almost. Yeah, you
Yeah.
can have that trophy anytime you want. Um, today we're going to be talking about receivables management. So this is a module that is native to GP's financial core. However, not everyone is using it. So we've tried to sort of structure today's session in a way where whether you're using it currently and you just want to figure out if you're using it maybe as well as you can or you need a refresher, and also for those that are evaluating perhaps on implementing the functionality. So we're going to be talking about sort of a wide sort of variety of topics today, and again, it's sort of a little bit for everyone regardless of where you fall in that spectrum. So with that, a few housekeeping items before we get rolling here. Most of our time, of course, will be spent in Sam's demo of GP, but we cannot hear you. So for those of you that have a question, or if my mic cuts out, which has happened, I won't be able to hear you complain, but I will be able to read questions. So if you need me, you want to get my attention, feel free to use the question box, I think in your right-hand side of your screen. We'll also review those at the end of today. So if you have questions, you can write them there and we'll come back to them. Now, with that, we're going to be mixing the format of these up a little bit more. So as most of you know, we do them about every 3-ish weeks. We're going to change the, I guess, format a little bit. We're going to refresh the PowerPoint, and I'm open to ideas. So if you think that we talk way too much about, what we do, or if you think we don't talk enough about what we do, let me know. If you'd like to see it structured in different ways, I'm open to ideas. Send me an email. It'll be on the last slide. So feel free to shoot me some ideas or concepts to improve things. We're also going to be talking about pricing. So if you're not using receivables management and you're interested to find out how much training is typically needed or how much money it typically costs to deploy, we'll cover that in a little bit of detail as well. And then finally, we'll wrap up with some questions and giveaways. So let's talk about us. Let's move on. So we are based out of Toronto, Canada. We're in the northern part of Toronto, the Yonge and Sheppard area, for those of you that know Toronto well. We've been implementing and supporting GP for about 20 years, so quite a long time. We have customers all over Canada, the US, and even some international clients. GP is our core. We're really passionate about the product. We've done a lot of integration work to custom systems. It's sort of our bread and butter, so to speak. And we've also created something that is quite unique, which we're going to talk about in a second, called GP 365. So just as an overview, if sort of we're new to anybody, if you have a partner right now and you're happy, awesome, keep using them. Certainly not trying to suggest you change that. Keep joining these sessions and we hope you get something out of them. If you don't, if you switch over to us as your partner of record, we'll give you 5 free support hours every year just as a thank you. So just putting that out there, soft sell, no pressure. Let's talk about GP 365 a little bit. So if we move on, GP 365 basically came as a result of a whole bunch of GP customers asking us for a better way to host GP. So we've developed a proprietary product that we call GP 365 that's hosted in the Microsoft cloud and is also load balanced across Amazon for redundancy. The concept is it's the exact same GP product that you're using right now. Nothing's different about the user experience. It looks exactly the same, except it's the latest version and upgrades are free. It's hosted seamlessly in Microsoft's cloud. It supports all your add-ons and integrations. And best of all, it's for a fixed price of $230 a month. And that includes everything from your future upgrades when new versions of GP come out. So it's a really great product. I'm not going to talk too much about it. We've had a couple sessions that have been dedicated to just this product. So hopefully you caught those. If you did not and you want more info, just shoot me a note. And if this reminds you to sign up, that's the link down there. You can go sign up. We're currently booking into May. So that's kind of the earliest date we have. We have a little bit of a lineup, which is a good thing. And it's also a great way of sort of upgrading GP for free. So if you're on, let's say, GP 2015 and you want to go to 2018, but you don't want to pay for it, this can be a great way of doing that, as we will bring you to the latest version for that $230 a month. So it's a really cool product, and we hope to have some more of you signing up. So let's keep rolling. At this point, I'm going to hand it over to Sam. So what we're going to do here is a very brief overview of what receivables management is, and then Sam's going to jump into a couple different scenarios of receivables management. And I'll try and keep an eye on the questions here. And if you lose anybody, Sam, I'll interrupt you and let you know. But with that, I'll
Sure.
hand it over to you.
All right, awesome. Thank you, John. So just so I can get started with a general overview of receivables management, what I'll do is I'll go through a brief overview, then we'll talk about some of the setup that we have, then we'll do scenarios in terms of where we're doing a customer, processing some information, and then some of the more advanced topics such as month-end routines and other items that I feel will be useful to a lot of users. So with that being said, receivable management essentially is a very powerful tool because it gives you a lot of control over your AR. It can help you manage your invoices, receipts, and analyze customer activity. GP is very good in that in the sense that it has a lot of different reports and a lot of different ways for you to go in and analyze information. So for example, it comes with a variety of canned reports, which makes it easier to perform analysis and determine where opportunities exist for improvement. But not only that, because GP is so flexible, you can modify those reports and add certain information that you might want to see for your analysis. So I'll go through a couple of the reports that we have in GP once we switch over, where I can show you how you can customize these reports. And on top of that, if you're not happy with those canned reports, but you want you want the ability to go in and build a report yourself, then GP also comes with Smart List as well as Smart List Builder. So as long as you have a little bit of a technical background, it's not too difficult. There is a lot of support online, of course, and of course we're also here to help. But eventually, it's a lot of tables and SQL tables that you can review, look at the different columns, look at the different fields that you have, and customize your reports and build them in the way that you want to have them. So with that being said, again, Receivable Manager is just another component of GP, which gives you the flexibility in all aspects in terms of reporting, in terms of transactions, what kind of roles you want to have set up, who should have access to certain information. All of this information is present. On top of all that, with the ever-changing environment and automation just becoming a bigger and bigger thing, GP already had thought of that from the get-go and being a Microsoft product. On top of all that, Receivables Management also gives you the ability to schedule payments, set up recurring invoices, batches, automate write-offs, and do adjusting entries. So there's a lot of flexibility with regards to what GP has to offer. So with that being said, let's go ahead and jump into a little bit what we're going to do today. So we'll start off with a demo. So I'll just kind of explain what I'm going to do, and then we'll jump right into GP. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to go through the different setup for receivable management, and I'll also show you just where you can find the information for sales order processing as well as for receiving within GP. After which we'll actually do a scenario where we'll start off by creating a customer in GP. We'll issue an invoice for that customer, and then we'll receive and process a payment for that customer, followed by just some of the reports that you might want to run just to see how the information appears within GP. And after that, we'll end off with a couple of the month-end routines. And of course, if you have any other questions or any other items that you would like me to cover, feel free to put them in the chat. And near the end of it, if we have time, we'll go ahead and walk through those as well. So with that being said, let's go ahead and jump into GP and just show you what it looks like. So right after get-go, once you're in GP, you're going to go into the sales series at the left here. So we'll go to the sales series. Now, in terms of setup, everything is located at the bottom here. So we're going to start from there. So because we're doing receivable management, under setup, you're going to go into receivables. And if you go ahead and click this window, it's going to open up the information for you. Now, I'll begin by showing you the different options and the different items you have, but you'll notice one thing right away, and this is something that we get asked very often, is how do you change these aging buckets? So maybe instead of current, you wanted to have different aging buckets. Now, it's not super simple, but of course, this is one of the steps that you would begin. There's a couple of different steps involved in terms of adjusting your reports, as well as the different displays you have, which of course we can help with, but that's a little bit out of the scope of this presentation because that's a very specific and very detailed item. But I simply want to point out this is one of the steps where you could essentially edit these, and if you wanted to give it a different name or have a different document date, then you can of course adjust that. So just to kind of show you, I won't save these changes of course, but just to kind of show you what I mean. If I change this to, let's just say my current date is 10 days, I could do that. and it'll change you can see that the dates and you can see the number of dates, and the due dates will also change. Now, of course, you've got these labels here, so you can, of course, change that. So you could say, just to kind of match, you can say 11 to 60 days, and then when you run your aging reports, you will see that it'll have these columns, or have these different columns for the different aging buckets. All right, now of course this is just one step. You have to also go into Report Writer and make changes, but this is essentially this is one of the areas where you would have to make the modifications. Now, one thing I wanted to point out right before I get into anything is, in the event that you have to give some sort of information or some sort of document to let you know what the setup is for a particular module, a lot of people don't know there's actually a print button at the top here. And if you simply go ahead and click print, it'll actually give you all the setups that you have for your company. Now, of course, you can print this, put it on your screen, what have you. Just to kind of show you, it's going to give me a summary of essentially what I have currently set up in GP for receivables management. Now, you can see that I've made some modifications. So it's gone ahead and already put that modification right there. See? So this is the benefit of having this printout. If in the event that you need to provide something to an auditor, and instead of doing screenshots, you just have a report that's already ready and available that you could send off to your auditor. All right, and I'll go through the actual different options within the screen itself, but essentially this is showing all the defaults that we have currently set up for this company. All right, so with that being said, if you have a particular password, just in terms of control that I was talking about, because GP gives you the ability to control what you can and cannot do, if there's any invoice where you have the credit limit for a customer that's being exceeded, you can implement a password whereby the user has to enter in a password in order to get processed that way. This gives you more control, at least from an auditing perspective, because not everybody's going in and approving invoices, and you're not taking on more risk by taking on a little bit more untrustworthy customers. Well, not untrustworthy, but customers who have exceeded their credit limit. All right, and essentially you can set up all the passwords you would like here. Because I haven't set up any passwords here, in the event that I have a customer whose credit limit is exceeded, it won't prompt me. But if I did have a password, it essentially will prompt me for a password that needs to be entered in order for it to go to the next step. All right, so you've got the different passwords, the different options you have here. For example, if you're removing a hold on a customer, which of course, not everybody should be able to do, just because it does affect your profit. It could affect your profitability if if you take a customer off hold with who shouldn't be. All right, if you've exceeded maximum write-offs, there's also should be a password along with waiving finance charges. Okay, now these two buttons at the bottom here affect a lot of your auto apply functionalities within GP. So at least for receivables management, whenever you're applying a cash receipt, there's always a button called auto apply, which we'll see later on in the presentation. But essentially, by choosing one of these options here, you can have the system apply based on the document number or based on the due date. So if you apply based on the due date, whichever invoice is coming due, very fast, is the one that it'll apply by if I have this option. Otherwise, it'll simply apply by the oldest document number and process it that way. All right. So this is something that we get a lot of questions about. But essentially, if you're ever wondering how do I change that behavior in GP to auto apply by document date or due date, this is essentially where you would come and apply the changes. Okay. Now within GP, of course, you've got a variety of options. So one thing that GP has is a lot of different options for its users. So you actually, in my opinion, I think it's analysis for I think it's too much, because sometimes you have too many options, you don't know what to pick. But essentially, all of these options are available, and I won't go through all of them, but I'll explain some of the more important ones. Now, for example, you'll see here I've got a couple of them already selected. This is a test company, of course, but your company will have specific options based on what you have set up. All right. Now, display, so I won't go through all of them, of course, but I'll go through the important ones. So tracking discounts available in GL, basically whatever discounts you have will be tracked in the GL. Then there's printing historical age trial balance, deleting unposted printed documents. So if you have this option selected, anything which is unposted for a printed document can be deleted, which of course is not good in the sense, because if you've issued an invoice, if you've issued an invoice and you sent it out to a customer and somebody goes in and deleted, now you have no record of that invoice. So it's highly recommended that you leave this unchecked, because if you have this checked, basically somebody can go in and delete those information. Then there's compounding finance charges. So if they don't pay, it essentially compounds interest based on what you've set up. Then there's pay commissions after invoices being paid, so on and so forth. Now, the most important one being is reprint statements. This will also cover in your month-end and year-end routines. Essentially, if you've printed a statement and you sent it out to customer for whatever reason, it's lost in mail, or they've taken it and decided, you know what, I'm just going to chuck it out, and you need to get another statement back. Well, if you don't have this option enabled, you can't reprint it until the next month. It'll take you to the next month to do it. By having this option enabled, it allows you to reprint that statement as many times, well, not as many times as you like, as many times as you like, but of course you wouldn't want to exceed after a certain time. But essentially this option will allow you to go in and reprint those statements month after month, or in the same month for a customer more than once. Okay. Then there's the ability to print tax details on documents. Now, if you want to send the tax information to your customer on your invoices, you could also go ahead and do that. And if you have dual currencies, you can also select that option. If you've got multiple currencies that you're dealing with, then this option is also available. All right, then you've got this behavior for auto apply. So it'll auto apply to finance charges first, and then after that, it'll apply to the balance. Now, of course, this depends on how you would like to process it. Most companies will probably apply the finance charges first, just because that is something that's accruing interest, and the balance will just remain the same. All right. And then you've got all the other options. I think the most important one here is warn if the customers are over the credit limit, because this is something that's very helpful in determining whether or not this customer should or should not get a certain transaction. Okay, so these are the variety of options that you have within GP. Now, I'm not going to go into too much detail on that. I just kind of touch base on a few of them and the more important ones. Then you've got your defaults at the bottom here. So what is your NSF charge? So in the event that a check bounces, what is the default amount of NSF charge that you're going to charge your customer? You can set that information here. And a lot of these defaults here will also play into will also essentially play into what you have in GP. So, for example, if you've got a batch, it'll look at these. If you got a receivable management batch, it'll look at these defaults and it'll try to apply that on the batch itself, just so that you don't have to go in and enter this information. This is more so from an efficiency standpoint, just because if you have to enter in the checkbook ID every time you create a batch, it can get a little bit cumbersome. By simply having it here makes it easier for you to look at, have it processed once, and then just essentially forget about it. All right. So you've got your different options here, and of course you can set up, and of course over here I've set up this checkbook ID, but you can of course click on the lookup icon and change it to whichever checkbook IDs that you'd like to apply. All right. Now that I covered options, I've got some more options. So if you click on options here, you can essentially see all the documents that you have. So you can see the different, what the next available sale number is. So if you're ever wondering, especially this is more important when you're doing some sort of an upgrade, you want to just make sure that all your data has been validated and brought over. You can essentially take a screenshot of this screen, and it'll let you know what the next available document number, or debit note, finance charge, and so on and so forth should be. And essentially, this will allow you to know that your financial data has been brought over correctly. So this is one way that you can verify that nothing has been, nothing extra has been processed, and all the information remains the same. Okay. Then of course you've got your dates of last. So for example, this is just letting me know the last day that I had a finance charge was essentially never. My statements were printed as of these dates, and so on and so forth. Then you've got your user-defined fields, which of course you can add to your customer master. This would be for essentially your when you're creating a customer, they have specific user-defined fields. So if you want to have a particular, if the customer master is not capturing some sort of information, you can also have information. A typical example that we see all the time is sometimes they just ask us like whether or not this customer, or well, this is more so for vendors, but can also apply to customer, would be, if the customer is a contractor or is working for a business or what have you, just to have that information for your records, just so you can determine what kind of marketing or promotions you're going to do for that customer. All right. Same thing for addresses. If you've got specific fields that you feel are missing in the customer master, you can add those fields here, and it'll start tracking it in the customer master. All right, and of course you've got the sales history, which includes what kind of history is retained. So right now it's only including the sales history, but of course you can have the discount rate and the miscellaneous, as well as the taxes being tracked. And of course you'll notice in almost every screen that you have within GP, there's always a print button. So of course, so again, if you're ever going through an upgrade and you want to make sure that you've got the right documentation, you could also print this or simply save this onto your PC, and from there, this will allow you to go in. This will allow you to go ahead and simply keep track of the information. All right, so I'm going to go and click OK. And of course, the last thing you've got is your classes. So this is more so for your customer classes. Now, this is where you determine a lot of the defaults. So for example, customer classes are useful if for example, you've got customers who are always going to be, who are all going to be based on their credit limit or their payment terms or so on and so forth. So you could do this based on almost any of these topics here, but essentially what this does is it displays defaults for a lot of the customers that you have. So once you select a customer, if you, in GP, like just simply enter a customer, all you need is a code and a name. But of course, if you attach a class to it, all these defaults will essentially be populated right there, just so it's more efficient for you and then you don't have to go back and start entering the information over and over again. All right, so these are some of the options. Now, of course, this is a lot of options to kind of go through and digest, but essentially these are some of the options. These are the options that are available for receivables management. So I'm not going to save my changes at the moment because I know I did change the aging period, but if I did that, it'll be half complete. But essentially, if you do need some help, if you do need some assistance with that, we can definitely help out. It's a little bit more of a cumbersome process than what I've just shown here, because of course there's a process to update the financial reports in the report writer, along with adjusting these aging buckets in everything within GB, not just sales, because of course you want to make sure that you're consistent in both your receivables as well as your payables. Okay, so that was the setup for receivables management. Now, of course, if you're using sales order processing, you've got your setup here as well. I'm not going to go through all of these, but essentially I just wanted to show that this is where you would set up a lot of that information. Okay, and the last thing, of course, is for invoicing. So if you've got specific things that you want to look at for invoicing in terms of setup, you've also got that information here. So for the purpose of this this webinar, we're just going to go ahead and focus on receivables management. Okay, so now that I've gone through a very high level overview of the setup, we'll go ahead and start off with our scenario. So I'm going to go ahead and create a customer. After I've created a customer, I'll create a transaction followed by a cash receipt. And then after that, we'll run some reports, some inquiries, and then we'll jump into our more advanced topic, or more so like the month end of the year end routines. Okay, so first things first, whenever you're creating a customer, you want to go into the sales series. Under cards, you're going to go to customer. And if you go and select the window, you can go ahead and enter the information. Now, another thing that a lot of people, I guess, are more comfortable with, some people, if you're new to the GP, this is the best option for you to navigate through the different windows. But of course, if you're a more advanced user, then of course you can go into the card section here, go to sales, select customer, and it's essentially the same window. Now, again, like I mentioned earlier, for customer, all you need is a name, and in this case, you don't even need a name, you just need the customer ID. So I've set up my GP in a particular way so that anything which is a required and bolded field, anything which is it's a required field is in red and is bolded. Of course, you have the option of changing it, so I'll just kind of quickly show how to do that. So and of course, I just want everybody to be aware, this is just for when you log in. So for example, let's say you have two employees at your company and you like to see anything required in red, whereas the other person likes to see it in black. If you come in and change your user preferences, like I'm doing right now, it'll essentially only be for you, and the other person will have to log in themselves, and of course they can change these settings for themselves. So right now you can see here you've got a lot of color choices, red and black. Typical accountants. And of course you've got your font styles, and as well as link field. Now link has a lot more color to it, but essentially these are all these options here which allow you to go in and navigate to different screens. So this is essentially where you would come in and you would apply the changes. But again, just want to make sure that you guys understand that this is only for your user account. If anybody else wants to use it, they have to log into their user preferences. Okay, with that being said, let's go ahead and create a customer. So John keeps saying GP365, so let's go ahead and create another. Oh, not 265. 365. We're going to create that as a customer. All right. And so if I just assign a class ID, you'll notice it's going to fill in all this information at the top, at the bottom here. And if I don't, I have to basically go through and enter that information myself. So this is just another way that GP will kind of save you the information, save you from having to enter all the information by yourself. So let's go ahead and just select this. All right. So it's filled in a couple of information. Primary is our address. Let's say contact is Sam. Address 123 Toronto. Main Street, Toronto, Ontario. Okay. I'm just navigating by hitting tab on my keyboard, and it goes to the next available field. If you hit Control-Shift-Tab, it'll go to the previous field. All right, so just another quick little tidbit that you might find useful. Okay, so once you're done, go ahead and hit Save, and you will have a customer that's created for you. Now, before I move on and just kind of show you process the transaction, there's one thing I wanted to point out. Now, a lot of people don't know this, but there's actually this all-in-one view here. Basically, will show you a report of everything for this customer. Now, because this customer is new, there's no transactions or anything within here, but you can see that how it lists it out and breaks it out by the quotes, orders, invoices, cash receipts, and credits and returns. So, you know, if you're ever just trying to see how a particular customer is doing or what's outstanding, instead of having, you can run this report yourself essentially, but there's a quick and easy way to just kind of view it from the customer master. Okay, and of course, if I change it to somebody else, which has data, you can see here it starts filling it in automatically. Okay, and of course, redisplaying it will essentially refresh it. Will give you the information. All right, so just one little tidbit that I wanted to kind of show you. Now that I've got a customer, let's go ahead and create create an invoice. So we're going to go ahead. We're going to go into invoice entry here. Sorry, transaction entry here. My mistake. So from here, we're going to determine what we're entering. So whether it's an invoice, whether it's a debit memo, credit charge, what have you. This is essentially where you tell GP what kind of document, what kind of transaction is that you're processing. So for here, let's go ahead and just leave it as sales. And because it's got a default layout for how it's creating my document numbers, it's already populating the next available number, which of course is 1003 in that sequence. You can go in and modify these numbers if you don't want a particular way. So for example, let's go ahead and just say January 2019. We're just going to call this document number January 2019. If you want to enter in the description, you can go ahead, but of course, anything which is bolded and in red for me is a required field, anything else is not. Now, in general, the way GP works is the top information, or the top of the screen is essentially, you know, a lot of defaults like date, type of document, description, that kind of stuff. The middle portion is your customer or your vendor information, more so like what are the defaults that you have, and at the bottom is where you're entering the details of your transactions, your invoices, payables, or anything else like that. All right, so with that being said, if I had multiple invoices that I wanted to add to this batch, I can go ahead and create a batch, and then essentially what that would allow me to do is add multiple invoices to the batch. Now, one thing that GP does, that GP will not allow you to do, is if you don't have a batch, you cannot save the invoice. So if you are entering in something and you want to save it, you have to create a batch and assign it to a batch. Otherwise, you simply have to post it right away. Okay, so let's go ahead and just create a batch for this. So we're going to call this Jan 2019. That's our batch. So if I hit tab, it's going to ask me, do you want to add this batch? I'm going to go ahead and click add. And of course, you've got your defaults here. Now, one important thing about in terms of automation for GP is you can have batches reoccurring. So for example, if you look at the bottom here, you have the option of changing the frequency of this batch. So right now it's being set to single use, but of course if I change it, I can determine, you know, how often or whether or not it should be a recurring batch or, you know, essentially how I want this batch to occur. So for now, let's go ahead and just select to weekly. So the posting date, when are we posting it? So let's just say it's going to be, I'm okay with, I know it says January 2018, but I'm okay with the system date of 2017. But of course, we'll leave that as is. Okay, so in terms of this recurring batch, how often do I want to recur it? So this determines how many times this batch is going to recur. So if you want to repeat it every week for the year, you're going to go ahead and enter in 52 weeks. If that's not the case and you only want it to occur to a particular time, let's just say March, then maybe we're going to set it up for only, let's just say 10 weeks, because I think we're just going to assume we're in the third week of January. Well, sorry, well, we are, but essentially, yeah, you go ahead and do that, and then you've got your default checkbook ID, which of course is being defaulted from our receivables management here. And what you can do is just to make sure that GP is kind of working in your favor and it's more helpful for you. If you know your batch is going to remain the same, and let's just say it's going to have 5 transactions in it, right? What you can do is you can set up this control account. And what this will do is every time you try to post your batch, or every time you look at this screen here, you'll know right away whether or not all the information was captured, right? So for example, if this batch was going to have 2 invoices and the total was going to be $1,000, you can set this up as a check, or essentially a control account, which lets you know what how much it should be and how much you currently have. So for example, if I do one invoice and that one's $1,000, of course that's not going to match up to this, right? So this is another quick and easy way for you to go and verify whenever this recurring batch is prepared, to make sure everything is captured. So that's just another way that GP will help you basically review information and make sure everything is up to date and correct. So for now, I'm just going to go ahead and just change it to 1 because I'm only going to have 1 transaction in this batch. Once I'm done, I'm going to go ahead and hit save, and now this batch has been saved. This is the document date. Let's go ahead and select the customer. So because we just created a customer called GP365, I'll go ahead and select that customer. Now, you have different ways of filtering on these lookups. Sorry, one more thing I wanted to point out is you can use the lookup icon, or if on your keyboard you press Control L, it'll bring up the lookup screen for you. All right. So from here, I've selected the customer column. I'm just going to go ahead and type in what my customer name is, because I'm not telling this lookup to filter based on my customer name. All right. So let's go ahead and find GP365. And there we go. And you can see that it's defaulting all the information that I set up in the customer card. Okay. So now we've got some information to enter here, more so the details of this transaction. So what was the cost of whatever it was that I sold to GP365, so you can enter that information here. You don't have to enter this information, but it's helpful when you are running some reports and you want to see what kind of margins you have on particular invoices or particular transactions. All right. So for now, let's just go ahead and say it's $10, or actually it was $235. I think so, yeah. Right. So let's just say it's $10 and sales for $235. Okay. So, and before you post, of course, you have the option of printing this invoice or just seeing if it's going to post. So you'll see you have 2 options here. This one here is an edit transaction list. It'll let you know if there's any issues that are going on with this, right? So this will be the form that you can send out to your customer. So if I go ahead and just print it, it's going to go ahead and generate that for me. Unless, of course, I've set off the the notifications for it, so it hides the information. So you can see here, this is what that invoice is going to look like. Now, of course, you can customize this. Now, at the moment, because we don't have Word installed on this server, it's not really putting into a Word format, but essentially you can customize all of these invoices to the way you'd like to appear. All right. So I'm not going to save. And then from here, of course, you can go ahead and print, and this will be your sales entry edit list. So if I go ahead and just put it on the screen, you'll see if there's going to be any issues when I try to post this. So before posting, you can also see, what the posting looks like. So if you don't want to look at the distribution and you want some sort of a report, of course, you can look at it and you can see that this is the total posting that's going to occur for us. It's going to be for $260, which includes taxes. And it's got the breakdown, the detailed breakdown of the different GL accounts which are being affected, along with your totals at the bottom. All right. So now I know I set my batch for to a control of $1,000. So I have to make sure that my sales actually go to $1,000. All right. And if you want to adjust the tax, of course, you can go in and modify it. But for now, let's just go ahead and modify that to 0. All right. Okay, so there we go. So just to confirm that the information is correct, if I look at the distributions here, I can see, it just needs to update, but essentially it'll be for a total of $1,000. All right, and once I've created my transaction, I have 2 options here. I can post this invoice from here. I can simply go to the batch and post the batch with the invoices inside of it. So for now, I'm going to go ahead and post a batch, and to do that, now there's 2 ways that you can essentially go to the batch. If you simply click the blue arrow beside the batch ID, it'll open up the receivable batch entry screen with the batch there, and you can go ahead and post it that way. All right. So let me go ahead and just save this and to show you another way. So at the bottom here, I'm going to go into my my receivables batches. I'm going to find my batch ID. Okay, and you can see here I've got my control and I've got my actual of $1,000. So you can see they both align. So this is another quick way for you to kind of know, okay, everything's in order, and I can go ahead and post. So let me go ahead and post this batch. All right, and these are all the reports that will be generated once you post a batch. So you can set them to be printed out right away, put them on the screen, or you can have them allocated to a file, which essentially would be saved somewhere on your server. So let's go ahead and put them on the screen, and you've got your different breakdowns and you've got your different sales entries.
Just
All
while
right.
just while you're doing this, Sam, just wanted to acknowledge that Paul, I see your questions. We're going to come up to them at the end. It's a really great question. So back to you, Sam.
All right. So awesome. Well, yeah, I'll look at those questions here at the end. Okay. So let's go ahead. So these are essentially the different reports that you have, and now that the transaction's been posted, I'm ready to move on and go to the next step. So of course, once everything's been posted, essentially all I have to do is create a cash receipt. So I'll go ahead and create a cash receipt. But first, it seems that there's a bit of an issue here, and it wants me to something happened with the batch. So essentially it wants me to recover the batch first. All right.
Of course, you did this on purpose, right, Sam? Just to show off as the most GP functionality as you can, right? So this is all planned.
Exactly.
Yeah, I get
Exactly.
it.
All right. And I'll show you one more thing. So let's go ahead and print the edit list just to kind of see. This is because I forgot to print the edit list. That's exactly why it's showing it. So it's telling me right now the commissions are distributed incorrectly. The accounts receivable distribution does not equal the actual amount. This is letting me know that there are some errors that are occurring within this batch. That's why it won't let me post. Okay, not a problem. I can go ahead and pull up my invoice. Just look at my distributions. All right. Oh, let's go ahead and just put the default again. Okay. So it was giving me those errors because essentially it was just pointing me to the fact that the distributions do not equal the totals. Sorry, do not equal what is in the batch. So again, this is just one way GP it won't even let you post because it thinks there's errors. So that's another way it's kind of working for you. All right. So let's go ahead and post a batch again. I won't generate the reports this time. Okay, so it's going to go ahead and process the batch. Okay, so it seems to have errors again in the batch. So let's go ahead and recover it. Here, let's go ahead and just change this. Okay, so there's one more error. It's just saying the cost goal distribution do not equal the actual amount. Okay. So let me go ahead and recover that batch one more time, and then we'll just edit the transaction itself. So just like how you can process using from the transaction screen, you can always go back to the transactions by simply clicking the transactions button here, and it takes you into the details of the actual invoice itself. Okay. Sorry. I'm just going to delete those taxes. Okay, so now my debits equal my credits. I'm going to go ahead and hit OK. All right, and I'm just going to go ahead and post. Oh, sorry. So save. Let's go to the batch. Close that window. Okay. Let me open that patch again. Still seeing the 1070. This happens sometimes. Okay. There we go. So now it's got the batch for $1,000. I'm going to go ahead and post. So it's got an issues with the so it's got an issue with the commissions, but essentially for the purpose of I'm just going to move on. But essentially, this is the process for posting your transaction as well as your batches. The next step, of course, is to post your cash receipt. So we're going to go into cash receipts here, and we'll go ahead and create a cash receipt. So again, just like how when you're entering in a receivables management, you do the exact same thing in cash receipts, where if you want to enter in a batch, you can go ahead and create the batch and add the batch ID. But of course, if it's just a one-off, you can simply select the customer and apply the cash receipts that way. So let's go ahead and select the customer. So we've got Batman here, and depending on how the customer has paid you, if they paid you with the cash, if they paid you with either a check, cash, credit card, or an EFT payment, you can essentially select those payments here. What this does is essentially if you've got different GL accounts for your different payment methods, of course, by selecting these options, your distribution will change. Now, over here, I can enter in the amount that I received on my check, or in this case, I've got a check. Let's just say I've got $100. I can select a checkbook ID that I want to update, as well as the check number that it was used to pay for. So if I go ahead and just enter in, let's just say they pay me with check number 0100, and my comment is payment for invoice. All right. From here, I can go ahead and hit apply, and you can see all the outstanding invoices for this customer. And of course, this customer doesn't have any, but you can go ahead and find a different customer, of course, here if you don't have one, and find it that way. All right. So let's go ahead and we'll find a customer that has some transactions outstanding. Oh. All right. Okay, so seeing a lot of these customers don't have anything outstanding, we'll just find somebody. I'm sure that this customer has something outstanding. Here. Let me go ahead and just quickly create another invoice here. So we'll do it for Aaron. Okay.
Just
Okay,
while
so it seems to be having
Sam is
issues.
doing this, Crystal, I see that you've raised your hand. I don't know if it's possible to write your question down if you're still there. That would be great. We'll come to it at the end. Sam, we're coming up to the end of our time, so.
Yeah, no worries. I'm just gonna go through the transaction for Aaron here. So we're gonna do the cash receipt. So of course it's not gonna be for Batman. There we go. Okay. So these are some of the transactions we have outstanding. So from here I can go ahead and just auto apply the amount that I had. Click OK, and you'll see that it's applied that transaction here of $100. So in this case, I've got the check from a different customer, of course, but maybe let's just, for this purpose, we're going to assume that it was a national account, and we were applying it to the customer Aaron. So from here, I'm going to go ahead and simply post the cash receipt. All right. And of course, just like any other posting, you've got a variety of reports. I'll just print the first one just to kind of show you what it's done, so you can see that it's applied. So it's got your receivable of $100 being credited, and it's got your cash of $100 for the GL account that we had distributed. All right, so that is essentially like a typical process you would have in terms of processing. You would have a customer, you would enter in a transaction, you'd post the batch or the transaction, sorry, and then you would have a cash receipt. Now, at the end of it, of course, if you want to do a quick inquiry, you know, if you've got to look up something specific for a specific customer, there's always this question of whether they should use a report or whether they should use an inquiry. And the best way to explain the difference between the two is like this. If you want to look up information for one person, I would suggest to use an inquiry, whether it's for a particular document or for a customer. But if you need multiple customers, then of course use a report. So what I mean by that is, let's go ahead and look up a transaction by our customer. So we'll go ahead and select transaction by customer. Now from here, you can select the customer that you're looking the information up for. So let's go ahead and just do GP365. All right, so you can see here, I've got something here. Now already it's simply showing me everything that I have available for this customer. You can use these arrows to essentially move throughout and see which other customer has other information. So if I move to the next customer, I can see Green Bay Foods has all this information available. And what you can do is, if you have one item selected, if you select the document number or the amount remaining, you can essentially drill down into more details about that particular inquiry. You can also, of course, use further filters here by selecting document number or document date to find the information that you're looking for. So I'll go ahead and just select one and hit document number, and you can see here that it drills down into the sales transaction inquiry window just to give you more of the details for that transaction. All right, so again, same thing here. If you got a particular customer, you've got the all-in-one view, which essentially will show you everything and anything that's outstanding. It essentially will be a summary of all of this in a more in a full screen format, and it allows you to drill down into your individual items. All right, so that is essentially an inquiry, and now of course you've got your all of your inquiries at the bottom here. Now, for the most part, I think the two most important inquiries that you're going to need are going to be transactions by customer as well as by document. They more or less are the same thing, but essentially will give you access to information very quickly. The last thing I want to talk about is reports. So if you've got here a different set of reports. Now, trial balance is probably your best bet, and this is the one that most customers will be running. Now, you've got different reports here. You've got your age trial balance options, and so on and so forth. So we'll go ahead and select the option. Now, a lot of people don't know this, but you can actually create specific reports and modify them to include your parameters. So, for example, if we've got this demo report here, but I can go ahead and create a brand new one. So if I go ahead and select new, it's going to open up this window here, and I can enter the information that I want to see. So let's say I want to create a brand new report. I'm going to call it monthly. So this is going to have monthly age trial balance with options. If you want it to be in details, you simply have this highlighted, and you can determine whether you want what you want to sort by, whether it's by customer ID, customer name, or what have you. So let's go ahead and select customer name. We're going to sort by the document number, and from here we're going to have all the open items or balance forward being brought forward. Then you can determine what kind of information to exclude from it, such as credit balances, fully applied documents. Of course, this is information that we won't necessarily want to see. We only want to see what's still outstanding. And if you've got a particular range of customers, you can go ahead and select that. Otherwise, if you don't select anything, it'll essentially bring it in, show the report for all customers. So you can also apply different ranges. So for example, if you want to do a particular class ID, then you can also go ahead and do that, or a particular province or territory. This is another way that you can run your age trial balance report. All right. The last thing I want to talk about is determine based on your default settings. If you want this to be printed, essentially clicking on the destination will determine how you would like this to appear. So for example, I'll go ahead and just select screen, click OK. All right, so now when I print this report, it'll actually print the report on screen for me and won't give me that pop-up. So let's go ahead and save this report. And I've got monthly here. If I simply go ahead and click insert and hit print at the top here, I can now view my age trial balance report for all of my customers based on my monthly options. So again, at the bottom here, you've got your report, and at the bottom here, you've got your totals by the different age buckets, right? Of course, so you can see how many customers are in this report and the different balances that are currently outstanding. All right, so this is probably the most important report that you'll need. And of course, it's giving me a quick summary at the bottom here by currency as well, just kind of letting me know, because I'm multi-currency enabled, how the balances are outstanding based on currency. Okay, so these are the different reports that we have. Now, the other thing I wanted to touch base upon were the month-end routines. So within month-end routines, once you've once you're ready, the first thing you're going to do is you're going to start off with, posting your scheduled payments. This would be anything that you scheduled. So scheduled payments are basically is a way for you to automate the system to post particular transactions or batches at a particular time. And once they're generated, you have to come into routines, run the routines for posting your scheduled payments. And after that, the next step is, of course, aging. So we'll begin with aging. Now over here, under the aging here, you can essentially create a report, just like how I did earlier. And over here, you can determine what kind of information you want. So for now, I'm going to go ahead and select the summary. And I want the statement cycle to, of course, include all this information. So once I'm ready, I'm going to go ahead and click process. All right, I'm going to generate this report. All right, so it's giving me a quick little balance here of all of my customer based on my aging, letting me know, what their credit is, and so on and so forth. And of course, if I scroll to the near the bottom of the screen, again, you've got your total. So this is another way for you to just confirm that your trial balance report as well as your month-end routines are matching up. All right. So once this has been so after aging, the other option we're going to talk about is finance charges. So if you have any finance charges, you can essentially run a routine here to charge finance charges to your customers. Of course, you can determine what your minimum and maximum charges are, and you can determine whether or not to apply forward. Now, not every customer has this, but this is another way you could run your routine. The other thing is statements. Now, once you've got your balances, you need to make sure that your customers are aware that they have a balance that they need to pay. And essentially, just like how we've created a report, you can do the exact same thing for your statements. So I've gone ahead and already created a monthly statement here. So from here, you can give it a description. You can determine the different types of defaults that you have, as well as what kind of information you're going to have that comes out. So right now, I have my customer statements for all of my customer, and from here I can determine what kind of form I want to use. So whether it's long form, short form, so on and so forth. Of course, you can modify these the way you would like, but essentially, this is a report that I want to. These are the customer statements that I want to print out. So simply, if I go ahead and hit print, it's going to go ahead and print all the customer statements for me. Now, because I'm printing it for all of my customers, it's going to go through and find everything. All right, so you're going to notice it's quite an extensive report. Now, this is the out-of-the-box canned report. That's why it doesn't have a lot of the formatting, but of course, you can customize and modify these to something that you'd like to see. All right. So with that being said, once you've got your report, you can go ahead and send those off to your customers. But now let's say you've printed the statements and one or two of the customers come back and say, hey, we never received that statement.
Sorry to cut you off, Sam. You got about 1 more minute.
Okay. I'll just finish off with reprint statements, and then I'll hand it over to you. But essentially with customer statements, if the customer comes back for whatever reason saying that I've never received it, because I've enabled that option to reprint statements, I can come into my routines here and I can reprint the statements. Now, of course, you can pick and choose which customer you want to print the statement for. So if if you've got a particular customer that you want to review it for, you can go ahead and find it. So let's go ahead and find a customer. So let's just say, Adam Park Resorts came back and said, hey, we never got our statements. I'm going to go ahead and select short form here. And from here, of course, if you've got your email options enabled, you can simply go ahead and print it. Or additionally, what you can do is, because I've got this selected, I'll simply go ahead and hit print, and it's going to reprint that statement for me for that customer that I had highlighted. All right, so this is the statement that I've got for Adam. Now, of course, I can print this out or email this determined based on what I've set up. And this just, of course, allows me to send this back to them for their records. And of course, at the top here also says reprint, just so that they're aware that we did send you more than one. All right. So I'm pretty sure I'm probably out of time by now. The only thing that I had to cover last were write-offs, but that's simply just one screen here. And from here, you simply determine what you want to write off. So let's just say I'm going to do this. I'm going to have a write-off limit of 1. I'm not going to select any customer, and you can go ahead and hit preview. So it's letting me know I'm going to write off 10 cents from this customer. If I click OK and hit process, it's going to go ahead and process the write-off for me. All right. So it goes ahead and processes the write-offs, and of course prints the information for me. So now that balance that's outstanding of 10 cents for that customer will no longer be outstanding, and will actually be written off to my bad debt expense account. All right. Okay. So with that being said, I guess I'll switch it back over to John.
Yeah, the cane was going to come out and pull you off stage. So very quickly, guys, I know we're pretty much out of time here, and everybody probably has a 3 o'clock. In terms of estimated investments to implement sort of what we've shown today in receivable management, it is part of the starter pack. So if you have GP right now, you're entitled to everything basically we've shown you. If you can't see it, it might be a matter of access, but it should be there for no additional licensing cost. A general implementation, so basic configuration and training of AR is usually around $3,000. So it's not a whole lot of money, and that of course includes the config and training. So because we're tight on time, let's keep rolling. Okay, so very quickly, just to get some opinions here, we have another event, of course, coming up in February. I'm going to throw a poll up on the screen just to get some ideas on what you guys want to see. If something is not here of interest, let me know. Send me an email. Otherwise, I will pick one on my own. And okay, it looks like Report Writer is the clear winner so far. Anybody else? Give it another 10 seconds, and then we'll move on to the giveaways and wrap things up. I know we have a few questions. I'll try and get through 1 or 2. All right, so I'm going to close the polls. All right, so let's move on. So to get to some questions here, I know that there's quite a few, so I think we're going to have to come back to them. But Paul, your question I think was first. So Paul's question is, when you get to AR aging, GP currently calculates LTD average days to pay. Is there a way to get that to be rolling to say average days to pay over the past 12 months? I know I can do it with Smart List and formulas, but that should be sort of core functionality. So that actually is not possible with native core functionality, but it is possible with a product called Collections Management, which is a really, really great product. You can do a whole lot more than just that with it. We're actually going to be having a webinar sometime, I think, in the spring. So to answer your question, not natively possible, great question, but it is possible with Collections Management, which is a great add-on product. And since we're out of time, I'm going to do the giveaways and give everybody back the rest of their time. So everybody, let me just give me 1 second here. Okay, so we're going to give away 3. So the first one is going to Paul S. The second one is going to Joseph D. And the third one is going to Salam S. So thank you so much, everybody, for your time. We really appreciate it, and we hope to see you in February. Sam, thank you for showing us a whole lot of stuff in a very short amount of time, and we'll see everybody in a couple of weeks. Any questions, shoot me an email. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.